Hello, and welcome to Matter of Fact, a podcast from the Roy Howard Community Journalism Center, where we report what matters. I'm your host, Halawi Tabebe. With support from the Scripps Howard Foundation, our center works to counter misinformation and strengthen truth-based journalism across communities in southeast Mississippi. Today's episode is based on our RCJC News reporting project, Southeast Mississippi Leaders Share Priorities Ahead of 2026 Session. Over the past several months, our student journalists interacted with mayors, supervisors, and local officials across our 10-county service region about what their communities need most and what they're asking state lawmakers to deliver. From aging infrastructure and road repairs to housing shortages, public safety upgrades, and the pressures of rapid growth, these local leaders paint a clear picture. The challenges facing southeast Mississippi may differ from county to county, but many of the solutions depend on decisions made at the state level. In this episode, we'll explore what these legislative priorities reveal about life in small towns and growing counties, how local needs become state-level policy requests, and why community-centered reporting is essential ahead of a legislative session. We'll also talk with senior student reporter Kristen Kaler, as well as SMP producer Alexa Hatton, and SMP reporter Jaden Koss, about what they learned throughout this project. As Mississippi lawmakers prepare for the 2026 legislative session, much of the debate in Jackson will center on budgets, bills, and statewide priorities. But across southeast Mississippi, those conversations start much closer to home, on roads riddled with potholes, in neighborhoods short on affordable housing, and in towns struggling to maintain aging water and sewer systems. In Lamar County, leaders describe the balancing act of growth. As development spreads in Sumrall, Mayor Joel Lofton expresses his top concerns ahead of the upcoming year.
Legislative concerns, number one, I would say PERS. That impacts every department we have here, whether it's public safety, public works, or even City Hall. You know, the ladies that manage our billing for the town, that manage all of the operations here, that is important, and that is a vital concern.
Additionally, recent statewide tax cuts have shifted how reimbursement funds flow back to local governments, creating uncertainty for small towns that depend on consistent funding to keep essential services running.
Another concern, last year we started the walk down of grocery store taxes. That is something that I think we need to watch very closely. In order to lower grocery store taxes, we had to adjust, or the legislature had to adjust, how the reimbursements to towns were calculated. Towns such as Sumrall, where one of our major tax contributors is our grocery store, we're watching monthly to see how that's impacting us. We have had fair tax revenue from sales tax for the first 3 months of this fiscal year, but in comparison to previous years, for the months of August, September, and October, they are a bit lower than they've been.
And local governments are left asking how to grow responsibly without losing the character that makes these communities a home. In Lucedale and Greene County, the concerns are more foundational. Leaders there point to long-standing needs like safer roads, upgraded utilities, and funding for public safety as essential to protecting residents and keeping communities viable. For smaller towns with limited tax bases, state funding is not a luxury. It's often the only path forward. Along the Mississippi Gulf Coast, the conversation shifts again. In Hancock and Harrison counties, growth brings opportunity, but also pressure. Tourism fuels local economies, yet it demands investment in roads, drainage, housing, and emergency services. Leaders worry that without sustained state support, growth could outpace infrastructure, leaving residents and visitors alike vulnerable. Forrest County finds itself at the intersection of all these issues. Regional projects, population growth, and economic development have created momentum, but also a push for construction. President of the Forrest County Board, Terry Bell, emphasizes the county's plans in partnership with neighboring counties.
One thing that we are in partnership with Lamar County on is the Eagle One mega site, which is if you go down Highway 11 and past the I-59-11 interchange, and you go about 3 miles down the road and look on your left, there is 2,100 acres that Lamar County and Forrest County have purchased together. And we have a board called the Forrest Lamar Alliance, and this board is actually getting that property shovel ready for a large manufacturer to come to town.
The continued collaboration between counties, cities, and the state will determine whether progress continues or stalls. In Pearl River County, leaders say those pressures hit hardest in smaller towns, where tight budgets leave little room to absorb new costs while still maintaining everyday services.
So far, we've been able to do a paving project every 2 years, and we use what is called MIMA funds, Mississippi Infrastructure Funds. And so in 2018, I believe, this was signed into legislation. The Governor Phil Bryant signed this into being, and so that has been a tremendous help for us here in Poplarville. And what we do is we've been saving up our funds like every 2 years, and then we would have a road improvement project. And the reason we have to do that, is to kind of save our funds, because most of the construction companies won't come in for smaller projects like we have in Poplarville, and usually we only have, like $200,000 or $300,000, that we've saved up for roads, and it takes us 2 or 3 years to save up those funds. And so now the city clerk tells me that at one of our last meetings that they said, if we don't spend our MIMA funds every year, then we're at a place where we may not receive the same amount the next year because we hadn't used, and we've been putting those aside, trying to save them up for 2 or 3 years, and because of the way the construction companies work, and again, that's they want the larger projects, and we don't have the larger projects. So we're hoping, to speak to our legislators and say, hey, we save up because we're trying to get in the lineup, for these construction companies to come in and take these smaller projects.
Taken together, these stories show us that legislative priorities are not abstract policy goals. They're rooted in everyday realities: the drive to work, the availability of housing, the safety of neighborhoods, and the sustainability of small towns. They also show us why local journalism matters. By gathering these voices before the legislative session begins, reporters help ensure that rural and regional concerns are part of the public record, not lost in broader political narratives. This reporting project doesn't just ask what lawmakers should do next, it asks who gets heard when decisions are made, and how local experiences shape the future of Mississippi. They'll join us now to talk about how this project came together and what they learned in the process. Alexa, now I know you spoke with leaders across multiple communities. What similarities stood out to you when comparing different legislative priorities?
Well, I believe that most of the ones that stood out to me were concerning the roads. There were a lot of counties, such as Pearl River County and Harrison County, who had concerns about the infrastructure. There were overgrown tree roots in Poplarville that were affecting most of the elder residents that they do have that live there. And also, economic growth was a big thing. Summerall is planning to do a big economic growth this year, and so they want some money to help build up their community, such as like their parks that they're trying to build. And yeah,
I think it's really interesting to realize how many of these smaller communities, although they may not be in the same counties, and although each county might have their unique wants, these decisions made at a state level are affecting different counties in similar ways. And I feel like that's very interesting to highlight. Now, Kristen, I know many of these stories involve detailed topics like infrastructure and housing, like Alexa just mentioned, which can be difficult for readers to understand. I'm interested in how you approached explaining these complex issues in a clear and engaging way.
Yeah, so the way that I think about it is, instead of being the journalist or the reporter, thinking about if I were the reader. So, I would want to understand, obviously. So, after we did the interviews and kind of got together everything that we wanted to put out, I would kind of do some research and say, okay, what's an easier way to explain this that everybody would understand? But, at the same time is going to be something that people care about. Taxes doesn't sound like an interesting topic, but it's important. So
yes.
Going about and doing the research and being like, okay, this is the best way that I can explain this that's going to capture all the information that I need and also keep readers engaged to make sure that they are finding out what they need to know.
I feel like you have a very good tactic as making sure, these are hefty topics that you're dealing with, making sure that it translates well to our audience. Alexa, another angle of this project that I was interested about was the relation between central government in Jackson and the communities across our 10-county service region. How did covering this project deepen your understanding of how local governments interact with the state legislature?
While covering this story, I learned that the local government has more of a personal connection with the state legislature. The reason why I say this is because these people, they don't just go to the state legislation and they ask them for what they want. They more so have like personal
connections, building those one-on-one connections. I understand. Was there an instance with any mayor or any county official where they spoke of a specific issue maybe getting more attention than another issue, and how they managed to get their voices heard by the state legislature?
So I feel like the Poplarville mayor, Louise Smith, she did tell us that she was in contact with Maggie Zell when she was trying to work towards getting a post office rebuilt or refurbished in their area. And she did say that Mike Ezell was very responsive to her needs. And the issue that came up was when we spoke to her in our state legislation story, she had informed us that there should be a better mental health system set up in their area as well, but she doesn't know how or when they would be able to set that up because there is a money issue that is going on, and she doesn't know who to talk to about that issue.
So with Poplar having these various unique issues, it seems as if only the bigger deals get the attention, when something has to be big for it to get state attention.
That's what it sounds like, because also McLean's mayor, McCluskey, he also has spoken to us about wanting to move his police station to the roads on, I believe, 98 or 59. I'm not really sure, but back check me. And he was saying that the reasoning for this is because he wants more attention for people to come into the town. Well, they can't do that unless they have the funds to move it, and he's working towards that right now, but he's unsure. He has a very lenient towards like wanting to ensure that he gets that done, because that was his main issue when we spoke to him.
It's very interesting to see how, issues may seem big to local legislature, but might need to be pushed further to get that help, or to get that support that they may need from state officials. Now, Kristen, I know this project was the first of its kind for at least you and Alexa and Jaden, for y'all to be working on. I want to know how has your reporting approach evolved since working on a larger multi-county project like this one in comparison to your regular work?
Ooh, yeah. Okay, so definitely going from typically stories that were one county or an overall statewide to covering multiple counties at once. You have your counties and your cities at the same time. It was definitely a lot to balance, but I've improved a lot when it comes to kind of keeping track of what I was doing and where, especially across the multiple counties. It was a lot bigger than I originally thought it was going to be. Not that I'm complaining, but yeah, working on those multi-county projects, I think, has helped me a lot, just like I said, in terms of balancing all of the different topics that are being discussed and being able to piece that together for content and for work, and like I was talking about earlier, breaking it down so that I can properly explain to people what's going on in their communities and how they can make an impact.
Because there's a general theme in all of these stories, right? So it's one might think, oh, okay, there's a general theme, so there's a general story. But then to dive deeper and find out what is concerning each specific community, and to write a story that's focused on a county while still sharing some of those same core needs and core desires that all the counties share.
Yeah.
I feel like that was definitely, must have been an interesting experience to go between contextualizing a larger issue and to broadening a specific topic as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially going from, we had big stories like Diamond's Head downtown, that was a first for their community. We had things like the coastal communities are trying to focus a lot more on tourism. And then all of the counties, most of the cities are, focused on things like infrastructure, roads, getting those things replaced. So it's all about going between the different topics that are being covered and how we can make sure that we're balancing and getting all of that information out without making it too lengthy.
Speaking of reporting on a vast array of concerns, I want to know how field reporting, including the traveling portions, the interviewing portions, observing communities, how has that shaped your confidence as a journalist?
Well, Larry, I feel like it shaped my confidence personally because when I first got here to USM, I did transfer from LSU. I never done field reporting before. I didn't know what that was. I didn't even know the difference between an anchor and a reporter. And so when I got here to USM, I didn't know that the center offered student workers. And so when I found that out and I started working here over the summer and started doing that traveling and interviewing, getting more involved in my community was very important to me, and it also shaped my own personal take and the reasoning why I'm here and sitting in this chair talking to you right now is because what we do here at the center, reporting what matters, is really not only important to the community members that we speak to on a daily basis, but it's also important to me because I'm from Mississippi, so like I feel like observing these communities has been the most important part, and it has made a difference in my life, and it makes me feel like I'm stepping out and doing something more than just sitting back and like just listening through a television, or you know what I mean.
Yeah, being a part of the change, being a part of the story rather than just being an observer. I understand. Any additions, Kristen?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. To bounce off of, Alexa talking about being active, being a part of it instead of just sitting back and listening. For me, I think it is so important to be able to go around to these communities and listen to what people need and being able to get that out. For those communities that need a voice, we're going to give them a megaphone.
And lastly, from a content and production standpoint, how did you guys approach organizing such a wide-ranging reporting project?
Yeah, so the way that this project started was, the state legislative session was coming up in January, but we wanted to be able to tell communities what they could be hoping to get after that state legislative session. So our goal was to go out and interview these leaders and be able to let people know what they could be looking forward to, how they could help make an impact, any changes that they wanted to see. We want them to know that there are options to help that change get there. So for me personally, organizing all of that once we got the interviews in, a lot of it for me was, picking out the trends and the patterns. So we saw a lot of need for new infrastructure, whether that be roads, water systems, things like that. And then we had more personalized, significant projects that were individual to each community. So Diamond Head has a brand new downtown coming in, crazy. The coast areas, a lot of them are looking into more tourist activities to bring in more revenue to, improve the city. And all of those are entirely valid needs for those communities. And being able to get that out there, we have to organize it in a way that it's understandable, accessible, all of the different things.
And me being the S&P producer for this semester, I really want to encourage more growth around every single community that we cover and touch base with. And as the producer, I will also be reaching out to newer or older organizations that the community has to offer for those who may not know. There are things happening and going on within their county that they can go to, or, just reach out to those people and they can try to find a way to help them in certain areas.
And to all three of you, thank you for your reporting and for giving us a closer look at what matters to our communities. The stories we discussed were reported and produced in part by RACJC News senior student reporter Kristen Kaler, as well as S&P producer Alexa Hatton and S&P reporter Jaden Koss. Joining us now to talk about how this project came together and what he learned in the process is Jaden. Thank you for being here. Jaden, what role does collaboration play when multiple reporters contribute to a single research project?
Collaboration means everything in these types of projects. From divvying up the work on who you're going to reach out to, because we had a lot of mayors and a lot of county officials to reach out to doing research on these topics. It was all divided fairly evenly. We went to most of the interviews together. That was a bonding experience. Particularly with the collaboration, I think when you're doing it with your friends and you're having a good time while you're doing it, the person you're interviewing can feel that. And it brings them comfort and it makes for a better interview, I think. And I think we did a pretty good job getting information. I think partially because all of us kind of were already friends and developed that in the process.
That makes sense. Was there ever an instance where maybe somebody wasn't able to get an interview from a county official or a lawmaker that they intended on that somebody else had to pick up? And how was that communication like between the three of y'all?
Well, I won't lie, we had a few moments where we thought we had sent out certain things that we hadn't, and we had to kind of catch up on that. And to be honest with you, I think we all struggled in our own ways to get certain interviews. Like, for example, we didn't even get the Hattiesburg one, and we're based in Hattiesburg. All that kind of stuff. We all tried, but we all had our successes, I think, but we all also had our shortcomings. But I think the most important part, as we said, collaboration, we did it together. That makes sense.
What did this project teach you about translating local concerns into compelling storytelling? Because I know how 10 counties who they might have overlapping concerns, but each county does have, their unique needs and their unique desires. So did this project teach you anything about how you can take the local concerns of each community and translate it to a story that would be effective to our audience?
I think it did. Maybe in not the most traditional of ways, though. I think the most valuable thing I learned from the interview process was a greater understanding of the perspective of the leaders, kind of like whether it be mayors or county officials. The example that's shining for me right now is Tony Ducker. I asked him, I think Kristen conducted the interview. She had asked him about priorities and what he wanted to get done. And he prioritized a varied list of accomplishments by the time he's ready. He said specifically, quote, that was used in the article, that he didn't want just one thing to be done. He wanted his time as mayor to get many things done and provide a significantly better base for the next group to come in.
Right.
Which I think sets up the cities a lot better, and the concerns get heard a lot more, I guess. Just because the mayors kind of take a varied look at it, and it's not what's the biggest concern to me might not be the biggest concern to the most of the population.
And by highlighting a list of concerns, or I would say goals, I feel like the mayor was also addressing the concerns of different parts of his community.
Absolutely. I thought he did a fantastic job of that, and kind of making more people than he would have in the first place felt heard.
And lastly, I wanted to touch on if there were any parts of this project, which I'm sure there were, that stood out to you, or maybe they were a career first.
The most memorable thing for me by far was seeing WDAM air The Pedal Story, particularly the video package I voiced over. It's about 1 minute 50 seconds long, and I got the whole segment was on WDAM, and I felt really great about it. My family was excited about it. I didn't know that was happening. It was a nice surprise. Definitely the most memorable thing from this, and just super rewarding to see your work on the news station you've watched since you were little.
And I was going to say, just to touch on that, so being a part of the community there, how was that experience for you? Because I know that you're on the Mayor's Youth Council?
I am on the Mayor's Youth Council, so I already did know Tony Ducker previously.
So how was that working, as part of a larger project, but being able to target a community that's hit so close home to you?
My favorite part about it was having people who know me in real life give feedback on it and tell me that they were either like, I had a bunch of people message me actually because I'd posted on my socials. And I had one of my classmates tell me like big things are coming. I got a lot of praise from people for it, and I was very excited about that. It made me feel nice. But seeing that real world impact definitely helped, because a lot of the times with these counties, you get so caught up in the creation process that you forget to think of the effects after and like what it's going to do to the people who are reading it and like what they're going to feel like when they're reading it or what they're going to feel like when they feel heard. And so it felt like it was a really amazing feeling to see the real life example of that.
That's really interesting, because I feel like that's what our work here is about, is targeting communities who are going through their own issues, their own hard times, maybe that aren't getting reported by these larger news corporations in the state, and to see the work we do actually get feedback in real
Right.
life, in real time, and it be relevant and it be addressing the needs of these communities is always amazing feedback.
It's something that really makes me think too. Like that was such a big deal to me because it was in my community, like we had said. We have viewers on every story, so people in pretty much every community we cover reacts like that, even if we don't hear about it. And I think that was it put our work into perspective, and it gave it bigger meaning than I think I let it have the last couple months.
And I was going to say, just to add on to, your exposure to small town journalism, did covering this project deepen your understanding of how local governments in these towns and in these communities, how they interact with the state legislature, and what difference that makes for them in their local governments?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Not everyone had focused on this as much as others, and sorry to keep pulling from the pedal story, but particularly Tony Ducker name dropped multiple. Name dropped Congressman Mike Ezell,
Sidney Hyde-Smith,
Sidney
also, I
Hyde-Smith,
believe.
the two senators we have. Roger Wicker, is that the other one? I think so. But yeah, he name dropped those and gave specifics about what they were doing and what kind of funding they were giving to pedal. A lot more funding than I think you think of, because it was like multi-million-dollar projects. And it's just, that's so much more money than you can even think about. It's not tangible to you. And seeing that kind of money and that kind of effect be given from Washington and our state representation, and seeing how it's going to empower our communities and going to improve our communities, has been really inspiring and eye-opening.
Thank you, Jaden, for your insight and your retelling of your experience during this reporting process.
Of course, man, enjoyed it.
Now it's time for What is True, our fact-checking segment, where we break down common claims, talk about how to verify them, and give you the tools to spot what's real. Joining us is Walker Scott, our What is True Media Literacy Coordinator. Walker is over our fact-checking investigations and leads the center's Ask Me What is True community media literacy trainings. Walker, how does media literacy help audiences better understand stories about legislative priorities and public funding?
When it comes to politics, biases can easily get in the way and muddle facts. It's easy for people to give in to the idea that decisions are being made for one reason when the reality is completely different. Being media literate means seeing through bias and lies to find the facts and drawing conclusions from there.
I see. What should listeners keep in mind when evaluating claims made by local leaders ahead of a legislative session?
Politics is not a science. Everyone goes into it with their own biases, and there's no helping that. Paying attention to a diverse array of perspectives and steering clear of echo chambers will help you understand what's really happening and keep all the facts clear.
Why is it important for local journalism to document community needs before lawmakers convene?
Timing is essential in public policy. Community journalism acts as a voice for a collective community, concisely communicating the needs of the people it represents, and helping set an agenda for lawmakers before decisions are even made. This makes the jobs of lawmakers easier, which in turn should make the people's lives easier.
Speaking of people, from a media literacy standpoint, why do projects like this matter for democracy at the local level?
People in our coverage area need to be informed on what their lawmakers are doing, and this reporting helps lawmakers make better informed decisions during the legislative session itself. By connecting community needs to the legislative process, this reporting helps residents understand how power flows, from town halls to county meetings to the state capitol.
And finally, what role does trust play in community-based reporting, And how can journalists earn it?
People in these communities have to know that they can be reliably represented. Without trust, the work that we do means nothing, because without a community that can rely on us, without that trust, we don't have readers, and our prospective readers don't have the news they need. A lack of trust would also harm our reputation, making sources less willing to trust us.
Thank you, Walker. That's What Is True, with Media Literacy Coordinator Walker Scott. You can learn more about the program or submit a question of your own at racjcnews.com/WITREQ or by calling 601-266-TRUE. That's 601-266-8783. The stories we just discussed were reported and produced in part by RACJC News senior student reporter Kristen Kaler, as well as SMP producer Alexa Hatton and SMP reporter Jaden Koss. This episode was adapted from our RACJC News reporting project, Southeast Mississippi Leaders Share Priorities Ahead of 2026 Session. A special thanks to the team behind this story, videographer Samin Chan, and of course senior student reporter Kristen Kaler, as well as SMP producer Alexa Hatton and SMP reporter Jaden Koss. You can read the array of stories that derive from this project and explore related reporting at racjcnews.com. Be sure to follow us on social media at RACJC News to keep up with more stories just like these. As always, thank you for listening and for spending time with us as we take you behind the scenes of the Roy Howard Community Journalism Center. I'm Halawi Tabebe, and this is Matter of Fact.